We're tuned into Recovery TV, the voice of hope, with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Discussions and information on addiction and mental health issues. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Thank you for joining Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Narcan. Please, go to the pharmacy, get a fulfillment of Narcan. Keep it in the house. You'll never know. You'll never hurt anybody by administering Narcan. So thank you for joining us today. My guest today is Claudia Morandi from the Doctor-Patient Forum. I got it right this time. Thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So tell me, what's happening with the Doctor-Patient Forum?
So because of you and your help, right, we now have a law in Rhode Island that protects pain patients, and they are exempt from the CDC guidelines. And then we added some additional language. Senator Val Lawson was a champion in doing that. And that language will allow these doctors to hopefully start treating pain again without worrying so much about the state medical board, without worrying about the DEA, even though the DEA, those are the feds. So there's really not much that we can do to protect the doctors from the federal government. But at least we know the health department has extended an olive branch. It's a step in the right direction to hopefully end the suffering.
You know, there's been a number of posts on Facebook pertaining to doctors in the Midwest and the West Coast being imprisoned for the overprescribing, quote, of opioids.
Right.
So tell me about that, because you seem to be the one that gets all these emails from all over the country.
Yeah, so I have many elderly physicians who are incarcerated. Their only crime was they continued to treat patients' pain. And not all doctors are good doctors. I'd like to always acknowledge that. But the doctors that have contacted me, they all have one thing in common. They're all elderly and they're all solo practitioners. And through our research, we've learned that the government seems to prey on the elderly solo practitioners. We know that the government wanted to make examples out of doctors, and the easiest way to do this was to stalk the PMP, which is the Prescription Monitor Program, and that's how they've been able to, you know, arrest all of these doctors. And once the federal government starts to investigate you, if you're indicted, they will seize your assets. So then you have no way of defending yourself. And at the Doctor-Patient Forum, we like to raise awareness to the fact that this is happening.
Now, there's been a number of folks that I've run into pertaining to not getting enough pain meds when they have operations, whether it be a shoulder surgery, knee surgery, dental surgery. We just had a gentleman who we just met who was given nothing. You know, how do we get the pendulum to swing back to where it needs to be? I know there's a law out in Colorado that you're looking at right now to implement here in Rhode Island, hopefully in 2024. But this needs to be a national issue. It just can't be a Rhode Island issue.
Right. So this is what's going to happen. If surgeons don't start treating pain again, people are going to cancel the surgeries. And I have about 500,000 people who follow me. My following will only get bigger and stronger. And I will continue to advise people to cancel their surgeries if they think they're going to require pain medication, because amputating somebody's limb and then sending them home with Tylenol it's not an option. People are getting readmitted for untreated pain because of high blood pressure. People are having strokes. From where I'm sitting, the only thing that not prescribing opioids has done was increase deadly overdoses by 900%. Because at the height of the opioid epidemic, the CDC reported there were 16,000 people who died. Today, there's 122,000 people. 122,000 dead Americans. So as doctors stopped prescribing, overdoses started to increase. And the data simply doesn't support that there was a pain pill epidemic. There's always going to be drug trends. And perhaps that at one time it was oxycodone or OxyContin. That in fact was a safe supply of drugs. Now that the government has interrupted the safe supply of drugs, drug users have now found their way to nitazene, border illicit fentanyl. Those are not prescription medications. Those medications are coming in through other countries and they are killing Americans.
So when someone calls you, we were talking before you get on, pertaining to an amputee, and they didn't want to give her any pain medicine.
Right, right.
And I thought it was kind of ironic what you told me, that the doctors told her, well, you shouldn't have pain anymore because we cut your limb off.
Sure, very, very common now. Some surgeons think that because of this narrative against opioids, they think that this is a green light to gaslight a patient. And we urge people to report the surgeons. You can't be a surgeon if you're not going to treat pain. And some people don't need opioids after surgery. Some people do. We have to stop this gaslighting because it's just an easy way out for doctors. You know, the fact remains, when taken as prescribed, FDA-approved opioids remain to be both safe and effective. Those are tried and true pain relievers. And in a perfect world, I would love to come on here and say, well, cannabis is a great pain reliever. But it isn't. It's failed in multiple trials. We support cannabis advocates, but it's not a replacement for full agonist opioids, and neither is Suboxone, which a lot of pain patients are being prescribed. A lot of elderly people in Rhode Island are being prescribed Suboxone. They're getting very, very sick. So we ask providers, again, treat your patient as an individual.
Well, you can ask providers to treat individuals the way they're supposed to be treated, but they're not.
No, they're not. And I don't want to organize a protest outside any doctor's home, but I live in Rhode Island, and the state is small enough where if I have to mobilize protest outside Rhode Island Hospital, Merriam Hospital, Kent Hospital, Newport Hospital, I will. We're sending a strong message to the CEOs of these hospital systems, the CEOs of Lifespan, start treating pain again, or there's going to be a class action lawsuit. The people must regain the power. To not treat pain is draconian, it's barbaric, it's unnecessary suffering to satisfy an agenda. And the agenda was to vilify OxyContin.
So what are you getting from these organizations? Are you getting feedback to say, all right, Claudia, listen, we're going to try to do the best we can to help the patients? But that really doesn't seem to be happening.
No, we need lawsuits. What's going to happen is there's going to be a slew of lawsuits against doctors for not treating pain. And this is what happened in the 80s before the fifth vital sign. And what we're just trying to get the message out.
So here's the dilemma. You got the DEA over here saying, don't write those prescriptions.
Right.
And you got the folks over here saying, I need pain meds. You need to find a common ground, a middle ground. And how do we do that? How do we do that to get to the middle ground? Because you got this over here and you got this over here. Neither one of them are working. How do we bring it back to the middle?
With the DEA oversight hearing. The only way we're going to find any resolve is with the Senate Judiciary Committee, which Senator Sheldon Whitehouse sits on. He's aware of the situation. We've asked the senator to write a letter to the DEA. We need the DEA to be investigated. We need a congressional hearing. We also need a federal law protecting doctors. I can't protect the patients if I can't protect the doctors. And I am meeting with Senator Reid, and I'm asking the senator to consider sponsoring a bill similar to the one that we have in Rhode Island.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. You're watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni, here with Claudia Morandi, the Doctor-Patient Forum. And we'll be right back after these messages.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. The Doctor-Patient Forum is in the house. Claudia Morandi. Claudia, thank you for joining us today. You got your hands full, young lady. You got your hands full.
Damn.
A lot of issues going on with the DEA, the state health department, trying to get the regulations to come back into the middle instead of being so far way out in left field with no glove. A lot of people are suffering.
Too many.
A lot of people are suffering. And I can't understand why people don't see that. You know, I mean, you're like a one-man band. You're trying to raise money to help with lobbyists in D.C. You have a great website. You're selling shirts, hats, whatever you can sell to make money to help with the people in Washington to try to get them to understand. But it's very difficult because you have so many of them to understand the process and what's happening. We, as we do here in Rhode Island, when it affects the people that are making the decisions, that's when the decisions are being made. So you have your hands full.
Yeah, you were, so throughout my journey with advocacy, I always remember advice. And the very first time I met you, you said to me, once it affects them, then everything will change. And that's what's happening now. Now I have lawmakers contacting me. I'm the only organization in the United States that does what we do, right? And you were right. So now that lawmakers are affected, they can't find doctors to treat their loved ones' pain. They call us because they think that we have doctors. The DEA has arrested all of our doctors. And it's only a matter of time before everybody is affected, because, you know, here's the truth. People look down on you if they know that you take pain medication. And some people will take pain medication every day for the rest of their life. The people that I advocate for, these are high acuity patients. They're not getting better. They don't recover. Yet the only medication that's being offered to them is the medication that's used in the recovery program. And what we're trying to do at the Doctor-Patient Forum is hopefully get a sponsor on a federal level, raising awareness to the fact that people with pain need to be treated with full agonist opioids. They don't need the gimmicks. There's, you know, these epidural steroid injections that aren't approved by the FDA, that are banned in other countries, these, you know, very expensive spinal cord stimulators. So the country is killing us. That's how I don't know else how to say it. They love us to death. You got to let the doctor do their job. I'm hearing from hospice doctors in Rhode Island, there's no medication in the state because of the nationwide opioid shortage. Once again, it goes back to the DEA, and I've asked Senator Whitehouse to address this because only the DEA can change this. No other organization can.
So how do we get the health department here in Rhode Island to look at this favorably and say, listen, guys and ladies who are docs, you need to treat the pain of folks that need pain medication. You know, and one of the reasons why, you know, we met is because of my father.
Right.
And how that thing went sideways at a hospital.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I always said, and I said in an op-ed that I wrote, I don't want any other family to go through what I went through.
Sure.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't, but nothing seems to be working.
No, because a lot of our lawmakers and a lot of the people at the health department, you know, they've brought their bias into this. They have a hatred for pain medication, and perhaps it's because they have a loved one that struggles with addiction and they blame it on pain pills. And that's really what's happened in this country. The narrative is being controlled by a lot of people, including health departments, who benefit from the narrative. There was $50 billion paid out in those opioid lawsuits, and now we're seeing the victims fight over the blood money. That $50 billion first is going to get paid to attorneys. I think very little money will actually end up where it needs to end up, but this whole war on pain pills was always about multi-district litigation, and now that they're done with multi-district, they're moving on to suing social media. It was never about saving lives. It was always about suing opioid makers. And whether people want to believe this or not, pain pills don't cause addiction. Trauma usually causes addiction. Poverty causes addiction. Homelessness, mental health, all of those come into play. But it was convenient to vilify the Sackler family because the Sackler family had the most money. And now that opioid prescribing has been reduced, we're in the greatest overdosing epidemic our country has seen, and it's only going to get worse.
So if you had your druthers about having a hearing in the congressional end of it with the DEA, how would you look at that? How would you stage that?
Well, first off, I would want Congress to you know, call certain people that are responsible for what's happening. And there was one organization in particular called PROP. They were, you know, they spearheaded the war on pain patients. And that's what I'm hoping to see. I want all of those psychiatrists, most of them are psychiatrists, it's an organization, PROP. I want Congress to force them to testify because they've always lacked transparency about their work and how much money they've made. And then I would like to see the director, Ann Milligrim, be questioned. Why is she allowing the DEA to cut production again? Why are we allowing prosecutors to only tell jurors a kernel of truth about doctors? See, I can't protect these people without protecting the doctors.
You know, to cut production
Again,
is going to be more detrimental to the United States than it was before.
It's going to be it's going to be worse for Rhode Island, though, John. Right. If we were to have a station nightclub fire again, there is not enough pain medication in the state of Rhode Island to help the wounded.
You're probably correct. You're probably correct. But I'm saying it to a point where there'll be more junk coming in to replace the good medication. As we're seeing it right now. I mean, my last guess, we talked about this. The amount of stuff that's coming over the border. It's coming over in boatloads, truckloads. It just makes me sick.
Yeah, and we want people to recognize nobody's dying from prescription pain medication alone. Right. Not in Rhode Island, not in Connecticut, not in Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut. Nobody. I can't find one person in the United States who died from prescription pain medication alone prescribed to that individual. Yeah. And we've introduced a whole new group of desperate people, and we've escorted them to the street. So something has to change.
We got to take a break. That's going to change. You've been watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. We'll be right back after these messages with Claudia Morandi and the Doctor-Patient Forum.
Now, back to Recovery TV with your host, John J. Tassoni Jr. Recovery TV is made possible by our supporting sponsors and our title sponsor, AdCare. Now, here's John and today's guest.
Welcome back to Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. Claudia Morandi is my guest today from the Doctor-Patient Forum. Claudia, thank you for joining us today. I want to talk a little bit about the bill that you sent over to me, the Colorado bill, and what that does. We have 2 minutes.
Sure. So I had an attorney draft Rhode Island's bill first, and then it took us 5 years, and thankfully the governor signed our bill into law. And then an attorney in Colorado, she was able to get a sponsor for a bill that she wrote, and now that's the law in Colorado. So I think we're going to have to change our language to mimic Colorado's, and we're asking Congress to consider sponsoring a bill similar to Colorado's. Basically, it just says the doctor can't be investigated for prescribing medically necessary opioids.
But what do you do with the doctor that is a chronic problem? Playing devil's advocate.
I don't really work with doctors who are chronic problems. We align ourselves with doctors who continue to treat their patients with compassion.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me again. We appreciate it.
Good luck with your Colorado bill in Rhode Island, and we'll see what happens moving forward. And we have the Doctor-Patient Forum information right on the website. People want to get a hold of you, or they want to contribute to your organization and the cause, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you for joining us today. You've been watching Recovery TV, and I'm your host, John Tassoni. We'll see you next week.